It was a really tough decision because I genuinely love teaching and I care so deeply about each and every one of my students, but it was important for me to prioritize my family. Hello and welcome back to the Blissful Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Christina Hall, and I'm so grateful you're tuning in today. In 2019 and 2022, I baby-proofed my small business to not only run without me, but to thrive without me so that I could take 2 4-month maternity leaves to be with my babies. And now I'm on a mission to help you do the same. Today's episode is a bit different. I'm about to go through a major shift in my career and business, and I want to share this personal journey with you. On the day this episode airs, I'll be wrapping up my last day of teaching. After 14 years of teaching private voice and piano lessons through my music studio, I'll be handing over all teaching responsibilities to my amazing team of teachers. It's been a long journey to get here, and I'm excited to talk about how I've navigated this transition, the lessons I've learned along the way, and what's next for me in my business. So grab a cup of tea and let's dive into this chapter of my story. The journey to this moment has been in the works over the past 5 years. It all started when I was pregnant with my daughter and still teaching 6 days a week. I didn't anticipate how exhausted I'd be while pregnant, so I found teaching 6 days a week and running the business all while being pregnant was a little too much. I got through it, but I knew that if I wanted to have more children, I needed to adjust my schedule for future pregnancies. As we prepared for the arrival of our daughter, my husband and I were trying to figure out how we could avoid childcare costs. Since my teaching hours were in the afternoon and evenings, and my husband worked mornings and afternoons, I could be home with our daughter until I had to go to work, and then my husband could take over when he got home. We did have a little bit of a gap in the middle of the day when I had to go to work and my husband was still on his way home from work, but my mother and mother-in-law generously offered to watch her during those hours. They both work, so they were each able to cover 2 days a week. So if I gave up teaching on Mondays, my mom and mother-in-law could cover Tuesday through Friday, and my husband would be home with our daughter all day on Saturday. It seemed like the perfect plan. However, we found it to be more challenging than expected. It was difficult for me to leave my daughter each day, not being home for family dinners or to tuck her in at night. And my husband found it incredibly taxing, especially with his long commute. By Saturday, he was exhausted from the long work week and then had to be a single dad for the day. I considered scaling back my hours in the 2020-2021 school year, but then we were dealing with COVID and the business took a major hit. We lost many students and teachers, and I couldn't afford to cut back, so I had to maintain my full schedule for another year. By early 2021, the business was recovering and I began planning to scale back. For the 21-22 school year, I reduced my teaching to 3 days a week. I was pregnant with my second child and I knew from my first pregnancy how exhausting that was. With a toddler at home, I wanted to make things easier for myself. So 3 days a week felt much more manageable. However, once my son was born, I had even more responsibilities at home and I needed more time for my growing family. So for the 22-23 school year, I cut back further to 2 days a week and then 1 day a week for the 23-24 school year. I had planned to continue teaching 1 day a week until all my students graduated from high school, but as my children's needs evolved, it became clear I needed to be home every night. With my daughter about to start kindergarten, I want to be there to get her off the bus each day, help her with homework, cook nutritious meals for my entire family, and be around at night to tuck both of them in bed and read bedtime stories. I also wanted to spend weekends taking both kids to activities and making family memories. Fortunately, we're in a financial position where I can make a shift. So for the upcoming school year, I will not be teaching. It was a really tough decision because I genuinely love teaching and I care so deeply about each and every one of my students. But it was important for me to prioritize my family. This transition took many years and careful planning. I needed to grow my teaching team and student base so that the business no longer relied on me to generate the majority of the revenue. I also was nervous and unsure whether it would even work. If a teacher left and we lost a lot of students, could we afford to keep the doors open? Are our profit margins enough to cover all of our expenses while leaving some left over to pay myself for the non-teaching work that I do? If you asked me these questions 5 years ago, the answer would be no. But today, the answer is yes. In order to make this work, I needed to improve my hiring funnel to ensure I was hiring the best teachers and admins. I needed to improve my onboarding and training process so that new hires were assimilated into the culture and were able to provide a similar experience to the one I provided to our students. I had to gain a better understanding of our finances, learn how to increase revenue and cut costs to improve profit margins. I had to get better at managing cash flow so that I was never in a position where I couldn't pay bills or team members. I had to create and document systems so that my admins could seamlessly handle the day-to-day operations. And I'm sure there are things that I'm not even thinking about right now that I had to coordinate. In 2021, once I knew I wanted to scale back my teaching days, I firmly shared with my admin team that I was no longer accepting new students. I wanted to make sure my current students were able to get a spot in my schedule, and I'm also the type of person who becomes incredibly invested in my students' progress, and I knew that if I took on new students, it would make scaling back more difficult for me. Also, students tend to become very comfortable with their private teachers, making switching to a new teacher challenging or discouraging. I've seen many students discontinue lessons just because their teacher is no longer available, and it breaks my heart to see young musicians give up something they're passionate about because they don't want to restart with another teacher. There was one instance when I did make an exception. The student had been working with one of my other teachers for a period of time, and I had built a good rapport with the family, and they asked if I had room in my schedule for one more student. At the time I did, so I was sure to be transparent. I told them my plans to continue to scale back and discontinue teaching. They understood and said they would work with me for as long as I'd be teaching. When I decided to officially give up teaching, I notified my students 6 months in advance. I wanted them to have ample time to figure out their plans for the next year. I gave each student personal recommendations on the teacher I thought would be the best fit for them and their learning style. This transition was definitely gradual. It was something I dreamed about for 5 years, and I wasn't sure that it would ever work. At the time, I was the primary teacher. If I stopped teaching 5 years ago, the business would have crumbled. But after 5 years, I've arrived. It's bittersweet. I'm proud of the work I've done, and I love seeing how happy it makes my daughter now that she knows that I'll be home every night. And now that my son will be going to nursery school 2 days a week, I'm looking forward to having time to tackle projects that have been on my bucket list. If you're interested in scaling back your responsibilities to have more time with your family, my words of advice would be create a plan, be patient, and be flexible. I never could have predicted COVID, but it happened and I had to pivot for a period of time, but I was able to get back on track. If you have any questions or just want to say hi, please DM me on Instagram at the Blissful Mompreneur. I really love hearing from all of you. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode and allowing me to share such a personal chapter of my life with you. This transition has been one of the most challenging yet rewarding experiences of my career. It's taken years of planning, growth, and as I mentioned, a lot of patience and flexibility. But now standing on the other side, I can confidently say it was all worth it. If you're thinking about scaling back in your business or making a major shift to prioritize your family, remember that it's a journey, one that requires a plan, an open mind, and a whole lot of grace for yourself as you navigate the twists and turns. It's okay if it doesn't happen overnight. What matters is you're moving in the direction that feels right for you and your family. I'm excited for what's to come, both for my music studio, Heart and Soul Music Academy, and the Blissful Mompreneur community. I'm looking forward to dedicating more time to the projects that light me up and continuing to support all of you on your entrepreneurial journeys. If you found value in today's episode, I'd love for you to share it with a fellow mompreneur who might be navigating a similar path. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell, and leave a comment below letting me know your biggest takeaway. It helps me reach more amazing women just like you. Thank you again for being here, and until next time, keep pursuing your bliss.